Mhm. Yes, it will.
Hello and welcome to the fourth anniversary of the Abolish Slavery National Network. My name is Max Parthis. I am the National Campaign Coordinator, and I will be hosting the event for tonight. We appreciate you being here with us today. We have a special presentation for you, and we will be hearing from our administration team as well as people representing the ballot initiative that we have this year for the Abolish Slavery National Network to remove slavery exception clauses from 2 states. I want to start out by uh, telling you a little bit about how we got to here from the past. And I'll be followed up by our um, colleagues, Dennis Febo and Kamal Allen. First of all, the first exception clause began in 1777 in Vermont, where I happen to be at right now. I'm here in Vermont. I was a part of their uh, African Landing Day, sixth annual African Landing Day event in Vermont, and they started the exception clause, allowing slavery to be legal in a constitutional document. They had 3 exception clauses to be specific. One that allowed you to be a slave if you were 18 years old or older and you chose to be a slave. Another that allowed you to become a slave if you did not pay your bills or the like. And then third, the one that we all know across the country now is the exception clause that allows you to be enslaved if you have committed a crime. And as a punishment for crime, you can be turned into human property and subject to involuntary servitude. That exception clause began what we know as a convict leasing period, where uh, if people committed a crime, they would be subject to involuntary servitude, put into jail cells and prisons across the country, and work for free. Many states adopted this exception clause prior to 1865 and the federal amendment. States like Ohio and Alabama and even Nevada all had precursors of the exception clause. And what that means is that this was tested and tried before it was finally accepted into our federal documents. After the end of chattel slavery, where people, the individual, were able to own human beings as property, a transfer occurred using these exception clause that allowed the state to now be the owner of people as property. Convict leasing in the United States went all the way up to 1928 officially until a uh, cave-in occurred in a mine where convicts were working in 1928, and nearly 140 people, black men, women, and children, were killed in that cave-in. It upset the nation and the world so much that the US was forced to stop this practice. But unfortunately, just like slavery, they did not stop that practice. We have seen the Associated Press release a very detailed article this year that tracked convict leasing in prisons across the country, where inmates were being forced to work on facilities like egg farms and McDonald's and a number of other places. So convict leasing, much like slavery, did not end when it was supposed to end. It still continued on till today. Uh, the ASNN began officially in 2020 on August 28th. which is a very important date in history. But unofficially, we came together immediately after Colorado passed its first of its kind removal of an exception clause from a state constitution back in 2018. We got together on a phone call, and Brother Kamal Allen said we should do this nationally, and everybody was in agreement. And we started working on it immediately. And then in 2020, on August 28th, we officially became the Abolish Slavery National Network. And since that time, we have put in a lot of work and made a lot of great accomplishments. Uh, with that being said, I'll go ahead and bring in our next speaker, Brother Dennis Febo, who is our lead organizer for the Abolish Slavery National Network, and he'll tell you even more about what we've done and what we're doing. Brother Dennis Febo.
Good afternoon, family. My name is Dennis Febo. I'm one of the founders and lead organizer for the Abolish Slavery National Network. Our mission is we are a national coalition fighting to abolish constitutional slavery and involuntary servitude in all forms for all people. We envision the United States where all people, without exception, are free from slavery and involuntary servitude, where they're protected by the state and the federal constitution. So currently, the United States is one of the only countries in the world that has the legal ability to dehumanize its citizens in the law. Section 4 of the Human Rights and the Declaration of Human Rights law states that slavery is abolished in all of its forms. And for those of us that know U.S. history, know that the 13th Amendment moved propertization from the individual to the state, and the southern states took advantage of this loophole during Reconstruction and implemented what we, as Brother Max touched on, convict leasing, what Jim Crow laws ended up looking like during segregation and the punishment towards people who violated, and then later on into mass incarceration because the construct of justice has been prophetized. So our organization moves to hold the United States and the states within the Union accountable to what international human rights law is, which is to abolish slavery in all of its forms. The exception clause in the United States Constitution, 13th Amendment, and for the state constitutions that hold such language currently stand against human rights law because the exception is a form of slavery. Currently, our national movement works in two scales, one of them being the federal movement and the other being state-based movements. The federal movement, we have a bill up called the Abolition Amendment, sponsored by various senators in the United States, like Cory Booker, Merkley, came together to form the federal amendment in order to permanently abolish slavery by removing the exception clause, repealing the 13th and replacing with the 28th. And for the states that end up ratifying, which most people don't know, only 25 of those states, half of the states in the Union, actually included language in their own constitution to speak on the legality or illegality of what slavery and voluntary servitude should be. So our state-based movements move on either for the states that have incorporated, any language dealing with slavery to remove the exception clause from their constitution, or for states that did not include language, like myself here in New Jersey. New Jersey has no mention of slavery. We move to add anti-slavery language into the state constitution to create a barrier or protection from the federal 13th Amendment. Currently, 8 states in the Union have abolished slavery, which are Colorado, Utah, Nebraska, Oregon, Tennessee, Vermont, Alabama, and the only states that had actually abolished slavery, Rhode Island, which makes it 8 states. Out of those states, the fight will continue, and we'll speak on this further. For upcoming states for 2024 and 2025, we got California and Nebraska on the ballot this November. That would permanently abolish slavery and voluntary servitude in those states. And potential states that are up for the fight for next year, we got New Jersey, Ohio, Texas, Florida, Michigan, Virginia, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Georgia, and plenty of other states that are knocking at the door because they see our ability to attain victory via constitutional referendums. So currently in this fight, we are in need of support, whether it be labor or volunteeringness or anybody that's willing to invest their skill. And the other is through donations and funding so that we can continue the work. If you're interested in what we're doing, we're at abolishslavery.us and Abolition Nation on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Since most of these states already have organized movement, if you are interested in participating, please feel free to reach out and we'll plug you to the appropriate leads in those states so that you can become part of the work. Or if you yourself are interested in abolishing slavery in your state and you did not hear whether or not your state was on this list, please feel free to reach out. And as our job as ASNN is to make sure that you're prepared and equipped to know how to go about this fight of a constitutional referendum, which is a big lift that requires a lot of collaboration and support from outside networks. So with that said, once states have abolished slavery, we move into the future, which is what does a world without slavery look like? And to do so, I will pass the baton to Brother Kamal Allen, our ex-lead organizer and our future abolitionist lawyer.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is an honor to celebrate 4 years of the Abolish Slavery National Network. And I'm going to touch very lightly on what happens after we abolish slavery from a constitution. So like many of the other members on this call, I am one of the founding members of ASNN, and I had the honor and privilege of helping to lead the abolition campaign in Colorado back in 2018. Now, at that time, we had kind of a vague idea of what this could do when we abolished slavery from the Constitution. However, we were still asked many complicated questions about what this means in terms of labor rights for incarcerated people. What does this mean for their wages? Or what does this mean for stuff outside of the labor and wage context? And at the time, we just didn't have the vocabulary to talk about what this does. And a part of the reason why is because we've never lived in a society without slavery and involuntary servitude. For the entirety of the United States, slavery had been an established practice, or it's been incorporated into the body of our governing texts. So we're being asked to imagine something that hasn't existed before. But that is our duty as change makers. That is our duty as people who are here to write the next chapter of history. And that's exactly the opportunity ahead of us now. When we had our victory in Colorado, we were asked a very important question by a member of my church, Shorter AME in Denver. By one of our members, she asked, why does my son still have to work against his will even after we've abolished slavery from the Constitution? We've abolished it, right? And I said, yeah, we did. And she said, well, why is he still being forced to work? And that's when I realized that this is going to be a step among a larger staircase of work that needs to take place. That what we did was two things. We opened up the door for challenging prison labor policy through litigation and legislation. That this opened the door for us to actually challenge prison labor practices in the court or through the legislature. But the second and most important thing that we did was abolishing slavery established a constitutional right that didn't exist for incarcerated people before. For everyone on this, for everyone watching this, for everybody not watching this who was not incarcerated, who was not convicted in a prison, the 13th Amendment is designed to protect us, except if we're convicted for a crime. During my time in law school, I've learned quite a bit about this topic. I've learned that courts don't make a distinction between the types of labor that prisoners are forced to do against their will. That it doesn't matter how severe the labor is, right? What matters most is, do they have the constitutional right to say no to that labor? And as of right now, if they're living in a state where slavery is abolished, it's not abolished, they do not have that constitutional right to say no. And so opening up requires us to understand that we are establishing a constitutional right among a large group of people where that right did not exist, and that we're opening doors for meaningful challenges through our court and our legal system. It's important to know that that because we've never been here before, the lawyers who are trying this out are testing out some very audacious, creative, and powerful arguments. At this moment, we are supporting several different lawsuits from different states. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that, but they are challenging, the labor policies that are forcing people to work against their will. But we're also recognizing as an organization that the 13th Amendment pertains to more than just labor. It has its roots in many different aspects of American legal life. That the 13th Amendment has its roots in so many areas because Section 2 of the 13th Amendment allows Congress to go after the badges and incidents of slavery. So this includes things such as voting rights. This includes other areas of life concerning disparities in different legal outcomes. That there are so many different areas of the law that the 13th Amendment applies to, that as an organization, we are going to dig our roots into and to really explore. So I just want to congratulate all the organizers that have opened up this historic door that we're going to walk through. As a society, we've never lived in this moment before, and it's so exciting to see that we're paving the way for history to be changed. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to pass this on to our next speaker.
Thank you very much, Brother Kamal. Between you and myself and Dennis, that's quite a bit of amazing information. We've come so far from the white lion and 20 and odd Negroes to the Abolish Slavery National Network. And things have also changed quite a bit over those many, many years. Originally, slavery was intended to be applied as free labor, but slavery was never only about free labor, as we all know. There's been sexual exploitations, very much like we see in our prison systems now. There has been psychological damages that have occurred in slave breaking and buck breaking and so many different aspects. And even new phenomenons have arisen, like we face today, where the warehousing of bodies is one of the primary revenue generators. Doesn't matter if you work a day or you don't work a day, but if you're put into a cell, a jail cell or a prison cell, you instantly become a revenue generator. And that revenue can vary from places like in Florida, where it's a little over $20,000 a year to incarcerate a person, to New York, where it's literally $566,000 a year to incarcerate a single individual in a place like Rikers Island. And I am very proud to stand among you to see the dreams of our ancestors come true. We are finishing what they started right here in this generation together. The complete abolition of slavery without exception, and then challenging those slavery conditions, badges, and innocent incidents without the protection of a constitutional amendment allowing it to continue as an institution. With that being said, I want to give our administration team a chance to talk to our listening audience, because there are real people behind the scene doing this, and you should get to know who they are. So we'll begin with Brother Nathan Woodcliff Stanley out of Colorado, who worked on the original Colorado Amendment along with Kamal Allen. Brother Nathan, if you'd like to come in and say some words. Nathan?
Am I here? Am I?
Yes, we can hear you. We just can't see you. Oh, we can see you now. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. Nathan Woodcliff Stanley.
Thank you so much, Nathan Woodliff Stanley, and yes, I was in Colorado for the abolition campaigns there. I actually now live in the same state as Max in South Carolina. But I've been involved in ASNN from the start and in slavery abolition efforts since 2016. Colorado was not, and the people involved in that campaign are not the first to work on and care about this issue. In fact, Max has been, broadcasting and working on this issue for longer than any of us have. But we were the first state to actually make a change to our state constitution to abolish slavery and involuntary servitude at a state constitution level. And in that effort, I really want to thank my friends from that time in Black Lives Matter 5280, especially Jamoki Emery, who got that issue on the radar and got the 2016 campaign started, even though we didn't win the first time. And then to thank Together Colorado, along with the ACLU of Colorado, a number of faith-based partners, and especially, of course, Kamau Allen, who led the 2018 campaign where we got it done and did succeed. Now, who knew that we would be at that point, that we'd be on the verge of abolition in 9 state constitutions a few years later, if we win our abolition campaigns this year, which I hope and believe we will. We've learned a lot since then, including about the nuances of the legal issues, our awareness that constitutional abolition is the start and not the end of changing the realities on the ground. We know we have a long way to go. But if you are listening, just know that you are part of a very powerful and very important journey in this country. There's no excuse for slavery and involuntary servitude to still be a part of our Constitution, of our legal structures, and of the reality in our prisons and in other parts of our nation. So thank you for supporting the Abolish Slavery National Network and for the movement to end slavery and abolish and involuntary servitude in this country.
Thank you, Nathan Woodliff Stanley, for your work and dedication as a founder of this organization for these years. Very much appreciated. I want to go on next to another member, Sister Theda Murphy out of Tennessee, who was part of a successful campaign to remove slavery exception clauses from the Tennessee state constitution. Yes, we have done it in the Deep South. So, Sister Theda Murphy.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Theda Murphy. I am the operations manager for ASNN, and I'm talking to you from Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. The abolition effort in Tennessee actually started in 2013 behind the prison walls with a conversation between the person who was the chaplain at that time and an insider who had been there for 20 years. And they were talking about private prisons and how they were, because private prisons were started here, innovated here in Tennessee. And they were talking about that. And the insider said to her, nothing will ever really change until you abolish slavery. You can get rid of the private prisons, but we will still be slaves. And that is how our abolition push started. We had to get to work and get it through 2 successive sessions of the state legislature, which means that we had to find sponsors and get Republican support to get it through with 2 votes, which we got through the first time with no votes in opposition. The second time we had 3 votes in opposition, which shows you that, not even Republicans want to be associated with slavery. And then after that, we had to work together and have all hands on deck to get the bill actually passed. And with that, we had Republicans and Democrats, and we had insiders and formerly incarcerated people, working to bring the news to their community that slavery was still legal, and we have a chance to change that in Tennessee. And so that's how we were able to get it passed in a deep red state, in a time when we have a supermajority in the legislature and have bipartisan support, because no one was for slavery. At least, no one's going to say that openly, that they were for slavery. So now our next step is to start addressing the way slavery is practiced. So that means that we start addressing the way that people are coerced to work within the prison system, which is on its surface voluntary, but it's not voluntary if you are taking people's ability to earn good time away, or if you are simply threatening them with physical or psychological harm. Then it's not voluntary. So those are the things that we are working on now, because once we passed it, that's just the first step. And passing it is what paves the way for everything that follows. So I'm glad to continue to work with ASNN, and we are continuing to fight for freedom.
Thank you, Theda Murphy. Your story is amazing, and you are absolutely right. It's a two-stage effort, at least in the beginning. First, we make slavery illegal for the first time. And the second, we challenge the badges and incidents of slavery that are so widespread across the United States. I would like to next bring in one of our newer members, Isabel Kennett. Please step into the room and tell us a little bit about what you have to say.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Max. I'm Isabel Kinnan. I am from Tennessee, but live in Chicago now. I got involved with this movement just about 3 years ago. So one of the newer members to it, as Max mentioned, want to shout out to my Abolish Prison Slavery team. That was a project that I started with about 10 other people from Nashville, trying to raise awareness of the 13th Amendment and push for a monthly call to action. Through that, I got connected with ASNN, and now get to work with this amazing team as the administrative coordinator. I was able to volunteer throughout the 2022 campaign on the Yes on 3 Tennessee movement, which did pass, as Theda just mentioned. And now I just get to do a lot of back-end stuff for ASNN, make sure everyone from the outside world is able to get connected with what we're doing. So it's been an awesome journey, and I'm just getting started.
Thank you, Isabel. Short and sweet. I love it. Isabel has been an amazing partner in this work over the past few years, making sure that a lot of things that needed to get done got done, and that the machine kept moving. With that, I want to bring in one of our original members, one of the founding members of the ASNN, a person I love very much, Miss Jamelia Land. Now, mind you, Sister Jamelia is dealing with an asthma attack at the moment, so I'm not 100% sure she'll be able to do this, but we're going to see at this moment. Jamelia?
Good afternoon, everyone. And pardon me, I've been over here off albuterol, trying to clear myself up so that I could speak. First and foremost, I want to say hello to everyone, and again, happy anniversary. It has been 4 long years in the making. I am here in California, and after, excuse me, 2 very long legislative sessions from ACA 3 to ACA 8, we have finally been successful in getting our legislation off of the Senate floor, and it is officially on the ballot for November 2024 as Proposition 6. So we are very pleased. It has been an honor to serve with the Abolish Slavery National Network and all of our amazing leadership. I want to give a shout out to everyone on this call, to all of the states that have been involved in this Herculean effort. And I'm going to go back to my breathing machine, but I will be back in just a tad bit.
Thank you, Jamelia. Indeed, Jamelia has been involved from the very beginning and spearheaded the California effort from the very start, which is now on the ballot at Proposition 6. I'm going to bring back a few of our other members from earlier so they can give you a little bit of their story as well. And we'll begin with our original lead organizer and one of the founding members who kind of between Dennis and himself brought us all together, and that's Kamal Allen. Kamal?
Man, I'm always moved when we have our annual celebration, and it's amazing how quickly time really flies by. It almost feels like yesterday when we were all getting on a call together. I believe our first day was May 28th, 2020. It was just a few days after George Floyd was murdered by the officer in the Midwest. And at the time, we were just getting to know each other. I know that some folks in the on the call had been familiar with other folks on the call, but it was a moment where a spark, like we captured lightning in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the feeling that I got during that call, and that's the feeling that I got ever since. That from that day, May 28th, 2020, all the way until now, it's been nothing but lightning in a bottle. And this movement has been traveling so much faster than I think any of us could have expected at first. Already in full swing, and then the initially it was 5 states that tried it in 2022, with 4 having victory. The momentum from the federal campaign almost came out of left field for me. And what I realized is that throughout that entire time, I realized that we were not alone. Man, because running that campaign in Colorado felt lonely at the time. Not just because we were one of the earlier campaigns, but because at the time we just didn't know who to lean on. We didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know at the time that a campaign was already getting stirred up in Tennessee. I didn't know at the time that there were rock star organizers in New Jersey and abolition experts in South Carolina. And so at the Colorado, we almost felt like we were in our own individual bubble. We got together as a national network. We decided that feeling should never happen to any of us again. And it never. And I've just been so inspired by all the amazing work that we've seen throughout this time. I could just keep going on and on, but I really love this organization. I love the work that we are doing. And most importantly, I love the doors that we're beginning to open, that this is a change-making organization. We've already achieved a monumental shift in what we've set out to do. And I'm just so inspired by all the amazing organizers, and just following y'all's leadership has been one of the greatest joys I've ever had. So thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. I want to bring in, once again, our lead organizer, who, if not for him, I wouldn't be here at all, because he literally snuck me in the back door when we started this thing out, and that is the New Jersey representative, Brother Dennis Febo.
So what was the question?
There's no question, just a moment for you to speak about yourself and your involvement over the years and your inspirations and things like that. We're putting
Yes.
a face to the names.
Thank you. I started doing the work, working with the incarcerated adults and juveniles 13 years ago. I've done a lot of advocacy and support services for thousands of people who have been incarcerated. I've gotten to listen to all their stories and see firsthand the way privatization affects justice and how it is used to marginalize communities in the United States. For someone working in conjunction with the system, I felt that it was my responsibility, knowing what I knew, to do something larger than, more impactful. So I started with speaking inside of the jail to our incarcerated brothers and sisters about their condition, what was going on, and all of those that were participating in my program at the time all were in agreement that we should go after the New Jersey Constitution. That was already 5 years ago. We've had a lot of struggle. We would assume that leadership of color, we would assume that Democrats, there's a lot of different assumptions, and it has not looked that way throughout the fight. New Jersey's back up, and we will not stop until I have breath in my body. We will continue to fight to end slavery wherever it is legal. But this year we do have them up, SCR 130, SCR 12, ACR 137, concurrent bills to end slavery in the state of New Jersey and its badges and incidents, including voting, including conditions of confinement, warehousing of the body, enforcement mechanisms to protect labor, labor conditions, and all of the entire scope and how it is that we can address it in the court of law. So we are up in New Jersey. I show you support. You know anybody out here, send them our way. And again, I'm leading the national movement. So anything, please feel free to reach out. We will keep fighting. Blessings.
Thank you, Brother Febo, for all your work and efforts. As for myself, I've been doing this since roughly 1995 with the death of Lawrence Myers, a 16-year-old boy who was shot in the back of the head while laying face down on the ground by a white rookie cop in Paterson, New Jersey. It caused the city to riot. Much of the country went crazy about this murder that occurred, and I was filled with questions. How could this possibly happen? And I became an activist on behalf of his family. I knew his family and him personally. So I became an activist in this effort during that period. And as I asked more questions and got more involved, I heard Angela Davis speak. And she explained how the 13th Amendment allowed slavery to continue. And she made a call saying that we need a 21st century abolitionist movement. And I was with that 100%. It was a click moment for me, meaning that, you know, you could hear it in my mind, the click sound when I heard about this 13th Amendment, because like many other people, I had never read it. I just took it for granted that it abolished slavery as I had been taught in school. And then once reading it, that was it for me. I understood what the assignment was and what I was dealing with. And then in 2010, along with Prismatic Dreams, I helped organize a national movement where we had simultaneously people in cities all across America go to prisons and jails and courthouses and city halls to protest, do spoken word, do music, and just in general make life miserable for these facilities during that time. It was called March 4th for Freedom, and it was very successful. So successful, as a matter of fact, that we saw that type of effort be duplicated later on with other organizations. And then in 2000 and I think it was 2020, yes, maybe 2019, I believe Kamal said it was May in 2000, Dennis Febo reached out to me and he was like, you know, I've been hearing a lot of stuff about you and slavery abolition. And there's this meeting with all these people that are coming together to start a coalition, a national coalition, and I think you should be there. So he, you know, kind of slipped me the address and I showed up. And that's how I began as my participation in the Abolish Slavery National Network. And over the years now, we have made huge impacts. As a matter of fact, I would like to take this time now to go into a video to show you just some of the headlines that we've been making here in 2024, some of the news reports that have been out about us. When we started this thing, almost nobody knew about the 13th Amendment. That can't be said anymore. We have definitely taken that assignment and accomplished it a great deal. So I would ask that our moderators go ahead and play our first.
If we are 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's incarcerated, we are out of line. We have designed a system that keeps economy down specifically for people of color in this country, and this loophole has been used in all kinds of ways, not just in labor. The ability to vote, the conversation on wages, locomotion, parole, probation, the whole, conditions of confinement, all of it revolves around slavery.
Senate Joint Resolution 33, which will introduce a brand new amendment that will counter the 13th Amendment, where there will be no slavery or involuntary servitude, including as a punishment for crime.
Now, similar language exists in the U.S. Constitution, and similar efforts are underway to change that language too. Currently, the 13th Amendment bans slavery and involuntary servitude except for punishment for crime. Meanwhile, a number of states have changed their constitutions to abolish all forms of slavery.
They are afraid of our power. And your resilience, commitment, persistence, truth, your movement scares them, as it should, which is why it is so incredibly necessary that you keep leaning into the work.
I will state, California has the opportunity to finally undo what has been done. Let's humanize the men and women that are behind the carceral walls. Let's show the rest of the world that California can and in fact is progressive, and finally put an end to legalized constitutional slavery.
Ayes 33, noes 3, the measure passes.
the last American anti-slavery campaign. Bloomberg headlines. From the New York Times to the New Yorker to the Washington Post to Bloomberg, headlines all across America and the globe. I have personally done interviews on an international level, and so have my peers. So when we began this, many didn't know, but that's not an excuse anymore. Because of us, millions of people are aware that we have an issue of legalized slavery here in the United States. There's a reason why we have the largest prison population that has ever existed on planet Earth, right here in the US. There's a reason why we have more Black men who are in cages than the top 5 populated African nations do combined. There's a reason why 95% of all cases end up in a plea bargain in an assembly line of flesh and bone that sends people into these facilities every single year at the tune of nearly 700,000 bodies. There's a reason why 13 million people annually go in and out of jails. And that reason is because slavery is still legal. And not only is it legal, but it is in practice. I want to say thank you again for everybody who has tuned in to hear us here on our anniversary. Also, the day after the International Day for the Recognition of the Slave Trade, and also the anniversary of 1619, when the first Africans landed in Virginia and became the first enslaved people here in this country. And I'd like to say that when they became the first enslaved people in this country, that was also the birth of the first slavery abolitionists in this country. We want to speak about some of the campaigns, the 2 campaigns that we have this year in Nevada and in California, and the importance of getting out the vote. If you're in one of those 2 states, we need you to do something that has never been done before, to vote slavery out of the state constitution. The first is, well, first, I'm not sure if Brother Marcus is here or not. Is he here by any chance? Would you know? Okay, I'll take it for granted that he is not here. Marcus represents question 4 in Nevada. Nevada took years to get their campaign through, and it is finally on the ballot as question 4. Very much like the 13th Amendment, Nevada's Constitution says that slavery and involuntary servitude are abolished except as a punishment for crime whereof the parties have been duly convicted. And for the first time this year, we had the chance to vote it out through question 4. So if you're in the Nevada area, if you know people in Nevada, please let them know. Vote yes on question 4 in Nevada to abolish slavery from that state. Also on the ballot this year, and this is huge, it took us years to get to this point, and several tries, is California. What began as ACA 8 and then ACA 3 is now Proposition 6. And I'm not sure if Sister Jamelia is in a condition to speak about it, but if you are, I'd like to bring you on.
Yes, thank you for that, Max. And again, congratulations to everyone and all the amazing work that we've been able to do collectively. I want to give a special shout out to U.S. Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove, who took a chance in California when she was an assembly member, transitioning to the state Senate. And she authored at that time ACA 3, which ultimately was killed in the Senate when we saw white supremacy rear its ugly head. But this last bill session, we were fortunate enough to have Assembly Member Lori Wilson, who is chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, and the support of the entire Legislative Black Caucus here to champion and support this bill. As some of you may know, this bill is also a part of California's reparations task force package. It's reparations bills package. And to be very clear, we have been saying all along that California has been having this conversation about reparations, but it has been a skewed conversation because you can't talk about reparations in a state where slavery is still legalized. And so we have had the support of the reparations task force as well. And we are also grateful. This year, we are strongly encouraging everyone to get out to the ballot box. Now, we know that oftentimes the conversations around civic engagement in our communities don't tend to happen unless it is an election year, predominantly focusing on the presidency. However, I cannot stress enough to people, especially those in California who are formerly incarcerated, who have now had their voting rights restored due to the passage of Proposition 17 a few years ago. We need you to get out to the ballot box, and we need you to vote. For those of you who have loved ones that are incarcerated, we need you to get out to the ballot box, and we need you to vote. It is time to put an end to legalized constitutional slavery in the state of California. And as was mentioned earlier, we also have Senate Joint Resolution 33, which will create an amendment to finally close the loophole left by the 13th Amendment. So we are very, very excited. You can learn more about our efforts. You can go to www.voteyesforcaprop6.com. I also want to give a real quick special shout out to Sister Warriors, as well as the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, the ACLU, the ABC Coalition, and all of the organizations that have come to the table to really help us push this over to where we are finally on the ballot. So again, and lastly, please get out, vote yes on CA Prop 6. And lastly, for those of you who may believe the lie that we've been told, that our vote does not count, I cannot stress enough to you, your vote counts in two very significant places. Number one, and the most important one, is when you get that summons to come and serve on jury duty, please go, because you may be that one voice that prohibits another body being forced into slave labor. And secondly, your vote counts at the ballot box, very specifically this year in the state of California and our beautiful sister state of Nevada for both of these propositions. Thank you.
Vote yes on Prop 6. Vote yes on Question 4 in Nevada and California, respectively. Thank you, Jamelia. I'm going to open up the floor for some Q&A, questions and answers. So while you formulate your questions, I just want to say a few words. Slavery is so much more than just prison labor. As a matter of fact, there are more people who are affected by the 13th Amendment exception clause who are not in prison than there are those who are in prison facilities. And what I mean by that is, for instance, there are between 5 and 7 million people in this country who cannot vote due to felony disenfranchisement. The most basic right allowed any US citizen is denied to 5 to 7 million people in this country. Also, there are 4 or 5 million people who are on probation and parole, and their rights are stripped from them. Their house can be searched at any time. Their person can be searched at any time in violation of the Fourth Amendment. And that's another 4 to 5 million people. And as I mentioned a little earlier, let's not forget the people who are going through the criminal justice system. where 95% of all cases and in a plea bargain, I've heard judges say that they believe the Sixth Amendment is a myth because there is not enough evidence to prove that it exists, meaning that there are not enough people who are receiving a fair and speedy trial by a jury of their peers. Instead, they are being railroaded directly into prisons and often forced to plead guilty to crimes they did not commit. And I must admit, that is happening to my very own son right now as we speak. He's being forced through a plea bargain to plead guilty to a crime where he was the victim and facing life imprisonment. In this country, Black people have to explain to their sons that 1 in 3 of them are expected to go to prison in their lifetime. These are things that are unacceptable and they have to change, and only you can change them. So let's go ahead and put up a question on the board if we have any, and see if we can get one of our members here to answer it. What does abolishing slavery mean in the context of the United States today? Brother Febo, would you like to tackle that? Dennis Febo? Okay, we may have some technical difficulties there. So let's go to Kamal Allen with that question. What does abolishing slavery mean in the context of the United States today?
So answering that question first requires us to acknowledge that slavery does exist today, which is something that not everybody, not every elector, not everybody knows. Slavery exists in many forms today, especially through the legal the legal system where folks are convicted of a crime, and their state constitution and federal constitution allows for any law to be passed where they can be forced to work against their will or other practices related to slavery. In short, abolishing slavery today means fully eliminating all forms of slavery and involuntary servitude, including those allowed under the 13th Amendment's exception clause, which permits involuntary servitude and punishment as punishment for a crime. So this involves legal loopholes that allow for forced labor in prisons and ensuring that no one in the U.S. is subjected to slavery in any form whatsoever.
Thank you, Kamal. Is there any other questions that we have from our listeners that we might be able to answer at this point? Indeed. Didn't the 13th Amendment already abolish slavery in the United States? Sister Theda Murphy, would you like to tackle that?
No, it did not, because there's a big exception. Though everything after the word except negates what goes before. So when it says that there is an exception for people who have been duly convicted of a crime, that means that slavery is still legal. It has simply been redefined, which is something that Max taught me. It's been redefined as a punishment for a crime. It has not been abolished.
Thank you, Theda. Can you imagine if the exception clause was in wedding vows? Like, I promise to love and honor and cherish, except on Tuesdays and Fridays. Anything that has an exception means, as you just said, that it negates what came before it. You can't have full abolition and an exception at the same time. If we have any other questions, I'll take one or two more, and then we have another special video presentation that we'll go into after that. All right, what is the exception clause in the 13th Amendment? Nathan, would you like to tackle that?
Sure, it's right there in the 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery and involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime, of which the party has been duly convicted and so forth. But it's that exception. As you've just heard, I mean, it makes it clear that there is a zone in which slavery and involuntary servitude are still allowed, and it has been used extensively over time. I mean, one thing people don't realize is that after Reconstruction, there were states that were making most of their money off of convict leasing. The state of Alabama, I think in the late 1800s, one year made over 3/4 of their state income came from convict leasing. Just straight out use of the exception clause to continue slavery and involuntary servitude. And then we've seen it as it is today. So much of the way our prisons operate and the use of essentially slave labor to make products in prisons for the state and for corporations, it's all still very much there, and it's rooted in the exception clause in the 13th Amendment.
Thank you, Nathan. Were there any more questions? I see we do have more. So what are the potential benefits of fully abolishing slavery, including the exception for punishment of a crime? Let's go back to Dennis Febo and give him an opportunity to answer this one.
Yes, so there are many potential benefits. We couldn't necessarily guarantee because we would have to litigate these things first. However, it's what we call the badges and incidents of slavery. These have been previous court cases on these discussions. However, each time in the courtroom, it ends with the fact that it is legal for corrections or the state or any other entity practicing any of these practices to do so. Removing the exception clause and permanently abolishing slavery will now make it where we couldn't say forced labor, voluntary versus involuntary, whether or not a body could be held for profit, whether or not the right to vote could be infringed upon, whether or not there are access to certain benefits as a laborer. So there's a lot of different questions. And we will continue to see the development of these theories as we continue to litigate courtrooms, being that we have Colorado, Alabama, and Tennessee in the post-abolition effort. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Indeed, there will come a lot of changes. As a matter of fact, you and I just met with a team of lawyers not too long ago, where the question was, how do we get people back their voting rights after this has been done? Once slavery has been abolished and you can no longer deny people their rights, how do we get 5 to 7 million people back their voting rights? And that's just one thing. It's so many other aspects. Slavery touches all parts of the U.S. Economy, social structure, all over. I see we have one more question, and then after that, we're going to go into our next video. Let's see if I can read this. My question is, do you think that Prop 6 and the other proposal in Nevada is written in such a clear and simple way that people who may not understand it fully will be able to support it automatically when they read it at the ballot box? I learned from Yusuf Hassan, words matter. I guess, I can take that one. I believe that it is very clear in both the California Prop 6 and in Nevada's Question 4. That was one of the things that we made sure of in this campaign, because we have run across issues where confusion on the ballot box, whether it was done intentionally or not, caused us to lose a campaign. And that was in Louisiana, where it was implied that an additional exception clause was being added and not taken away. And it caused quite a bit of confusion. Also, Colorado went through the same problem in their first campaign in 2017 when they tried to remove the exception clause then, and people were confused about some of the language. So we've learned that hard lesson, and working with these states across the country, we have done our best to make sure that that is always clear and concise on the ballot so people know exactly what it is they are voting to remove. All right, thank you for your questions today. I want to go ahead and get into our next video presentation, and then we've got a little more beyond that, and we'll be concluding soon. Ladies.
My name is Johnny Perez. I work as the Director of U.S. Prison Programs for the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, and I'm also a slavery abolitionist. Today, I want to talk to you about the critical issue of forced slavery through the lens of the End the Exception campaign. Both of these pivotal pieces of legislation, Senate Joint Resolution 33, House Joint Resolution 72, together make the Abolition Amendment. All across this country, there are people who are forced into labor just because they're incarcerated. During my incarceration, I was forced to work for 17 cents an hour under the threat of being placed inside of solitary confinement, which is 23 hours locked in a cell with no windows, little to no human contact. In my own experience, I worked for all of my 20s, sewing sheets, pillowcases, boxers, for 17 cents an hour, with no days off, no bereavement time, no vacation time, and little ability to save or send money home to my family, which I left behind. We send people to prison as punishment and not for punishment. And that's why the Abolition Amendment needs to be passed.
Hi, I'm Margot Kirchner, and I'm an abolitionist. I head the Wisconsin Justice Initiative and WJI Action, which are nonprofits that educate the public about Wisconsin's justice system and advocate for progressive change to improve the outcomes of those in the system, their families, and the community. In 1854, the Wisconsin Supreme Court declared the Federal Fugitive Slave Act unconstitutional, and it later defied the U.S. Supreme Court on the same issue. Yet today, Wisconsin's Constitution still contains a provision permitting slavery for those convicted of crime. We must amend our Constitution to eliminate that provision and ban slavery in any form and in all circumstances.
My name is Sean Darling. I am the lead organizer for Abolish Slavery Maine, and I am a slavery abolitionist. I am currently campaigning to add language to the Maine state constitution to prohibit the practices of slavery and involuntary servitude as legally permitted by the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I stand in solidarity with my fellow organizers across the U.S. who are working to add such language to their state constitutions or who are working to remove exception clauses to their own state constitutions. Further, I support the federal effort to pass the Abolition Amendment to repeal and replace the exception clause to the 13th Amendment to disallow slavery or voluntary servitude for punishment for a crime.
Hi, my name is Sarah and I represent Abolish Slavery National Network in DC. I'm a slavery abolitionist. DC is the beating heart of our nation. It's our nation's capital, supposedly the freest nation in the world, yet slavery is still legal here. We'd love to have your support to finally ending the exception to finally abolishing slavery here in DC once and for all.
Hello, my name is Walisha Wilson and I am the president of the Georgia chapter of All of Us or None. Incarcerated Georgians get paid zero to produce billions in goods and services. We're not protected by unions, and we don't receive any safety gear, and we're punished when we refuse to work. The current Georgia law states that there shall be no involuntary servitude in the state of Georgia except as a punishment for crime. It is our goal in our current campaign to end slavery in Georgia to have the law amended to say that there shall be no involuntary servitude in the state of Georgia, period.
My name is Antoine Henshaw. In slavery in New Jersey. I am an abolitionist. Right now we're dealing with the dubious nature of the institution of slavery being imposed on our youth in our state and parole violators. Currently, It costs $608,000 a year to incarcerate one of our youth for a year, and it costs us $53,000 a year to incarcerate an adult. They're paying for it on the back end, and this funding could be used towards the liberation of our people in our community as a public health initiative instead of a public safety threat.
My name is Pat Gately, and I'm a slavery abolitionist serving as the lead organizer for the Abolish Slavery Kentucky campaign. Because many Kentuckians do not know that slavery is legal here, Abolish Slavery Kentucky does a lot of education. We table at events where we can network while we educate, and we provide tools and encouragement for contacting elected officials. We also do presentations, lead discussions, and answer questions about why slavery is still in our Constitution and what we need to do to change that. We're building a coalition of partners and hope to see an option to strike the exception clause on our next ballot.
That was amazing to hear the voices of our partners across the country. I want to say thank you for everyone who participated tonight. I'm glad we got a chance to put faces with the names so you get to meet the people who are behind this epic effort that has resulted in the changing of 8 constitutions across America since 2018, and 2 more to be added to it at the end of this year in November, making it 10 constitutions being changed, as well as a joint federal resolution to change or to repeal and replace the 13th Amendment itself. Applause to all of you. You are heroes, superheroes, and my superheroes in particular. I want to give you some information, and I have a couple of asks for you. If you want to find out more, about our federal amendment, you can go to endtheexception.com, and that's in reference to our federal amendment, which will repeal and replace with a potential 28th Amendment, the 13th Amendment, very much like what was done during Prohibition, when the 18th Amendment was repealed and replaced by the 21st. So this is a historic moment, and you can support by going to endtheexception.com. To help the Abolish Slavery National Network in our state-by-state campaigns, and we need all the help we can get, you can go to abolishslavery.us. That's abolishslavery.us. We provide plenty of educational resources, information, news, videos. It can all be found right there on our website. And we need you to visit that website, because one of the first things that you need to do when fighting this system is to educate yourself. As the legend Gil Scott-Heron has said, revolution begins in your mind the moment that you change your mind. And in order to deal with this, you do have to change your mind about what it is you're dealing with. This is not mass incarceration. This is not over-policing. This is not injustice in the courts. This is slavery, and it's got to end. So you can find out plenty of information at abolishslavery.us. And if you want to hear information in regards to this whole system, and combined with spoken word and poetry and guests, you can go to abolitiontoday.org. We have 4 years of archived episodes there that I am quite sure that you will enjoy. That's abolitiontoday.org. When you visit these websites, please, especially at abolishslavery.us, make a donation, no matter how small or how large it may be. We can only continue with your help, and we need your help to do what has never been done before and to continue to make history. So please be generous, not only with your resources, but with your time. And we want to thank you for those who have already done so to help us get to this part right here. We want to remind you that even if you don't live in the state of Nevada or California, you probably know somebody who does. So please share the requests to get out to vote on your websites, on your social media for Question 4 in Nevada and Proposition 6 in California, because the only way we're going to end slavery in the United States is if you decide to help us end slavery in the United States. Once again, I want to thank all of our administration members and guests here tonight, and I want to thank you for being here to listen with us, and to our partners all across America. We appreciate you, we respect you. God bless until we see you again. We're going to close this off with a wonderful song called Something Inside So Strong, because that's what we feel like there's something inside of us so strong that's going to allow us victory. Thank you, and God bless.
They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, a warrior, more than a survivor. You can thrive, transformed by adversity. You face every challenge, throw your way, stand strong, you can overcome. They try to beat us down, but we rise above the struggle. Never giving up under pressure, we don't struggle. Instead, we discover gold inside as we realize no matter what, you'll never dull our shine. my place inside this wonder web that's will shine so brightly in what blind you. Something inside so strong. Know that though you're doing me wrong, you thought never cry. No, no. Something inside so strong. There's something inside me.
All right, let's end the live stream.